All right, everybody, welcome to Talking Ball, y'all. And as you can see, we had so much fun last year doing this that we decided to do it again. My name is Cass Hargis. That's Lance Lacoste, and joining us this year is going to be Jason Dewey. We could not leave his expertise out of this show, so we're fired up to talk some high school football with y'all. Before we get into a lot of the show tonight, just something different we'll be doing this year is every Sunday night we'll go live. That'll be the show that we recap the week before, look ahead to the week coming up, talk about the big games around the state. On Tuesday nights, we plan on interviewing a coach. That will not be done live. We'll just record it and put it on our YouTube channel. So whether you're watching this on YouTube or on Twitter, we appreciate it. Tell your friends about it if you like it. Try to spread the word a little bit. Just some guys talking some high school football here. But we're fired up to be here. It's football season, fellas.
Yeah, I mean, I said I appreciate that both you and Lance use the term expertise. I've never been called an expert other than laying on my couch and taking a nap, But I appreciate being here with you guys. I've gotten to call games with both of y'all over the past few years. I've had a blast doing it. So I look forward this season to be talking some ball with y'all.
No doubt.
Same here. Yeah, I mean, it's just great to be back at it. It feels like yesterday we were doing this. We did it just for the playoffs. We were getting so much positive feedback and just interest, I guess, from the public around here that it was really cool. And I think it's gonna be even bigger and better this year, especially with the addition of Jason.
Gotta give the people what they want.
Yeah.
All right, let's just jump into it. Speaking of last year, we'll kind of wrap up last year before we look ahead to this year. But state champions last year, a couple of familiar names, a lot of familiar names that made it that far. We had Shaw making it back and winning it for the first time in a while with Coach Hank Turney. Carr, I think, is somebody that if you look up at the end of the season and they're not in the Superdome, you think something's wrong. The football that's being played in Central Louisiana with Ash, they keep knocking on doors. The second time they've been to the state championship in the last 4 years. They finished as a runner-up both times, but what Coach Bachman's done with that program is extremely impressive. And I think if you look, maybe the most surprising result from last year's state championship games, I would say, is probably Central over Ruston. And what they did, not just them winning a game, but how they won it over a Ruston team that was dominating all year long. Coach Salt had Franklinton back. They lost to Cecilia in Division II non-select. You had Catholic High New Iberia, a team that's a very well-run program. They get back and they win a state title over an extremely talented Dunham team, and then teams like Sterlington over St. James. Again, two teams you always see: Vermilion Catholic under Coach Brock Prejean, knock off Ouachita Christian, and then South Platte, like a throwback from back to the mid-2000s. They go and take on a program in Haynesville and win another state championship down to the Dome. So if you have any thoughts on last year before we look ahead to this year.
I mean, Carr being in Division I select with we've all seen the Catholic League before. We've talked about it so many times off the air, just the amount of talent for them to go through that gauntlet undefeated in the manner that they did was really impressive. And they've got a ton of guys coming back. That's the scary thing about that team. But to your point about Ruston and Central, man, that was definitely a shock in the manner at which it happened. We knew Central was a good team coming into that game and that matchup, but they got Ahmad Hudson on Ruston, who's 6'7". Talk about the number one tight end in the country coming back, and they did a really good job handling that game. But yeah, Lance and I called for the Catholic New Iberia team. I wasn't really shocked that they were able to win that game, although we knew that'd be a good game. But Lance and I got to call that team playing Newman on the road, and we knew that they had some talent. We knew that they had a chance to make a run, and a lot of guys playing both ways. And the way that coach was able to handle that team and able to move those guys around on both sides of the ball was really impressive. And you should expect them to be making another run this year, despite losing a lot of pieces on offense, especially at quarterback and tight end were two big pieces, but a lot of guys coming back on that team.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with all of those points. I think looking down at a couple of those other games, I was lucky to see South Platte late in the season as well against Newman. I was really high on them from jump. They were super impressive against Newman. They lost to Newman, but they just weren't quite as well-rounded as Newman. They had some studs, and their quarterback is back this year, so excited to see what those guys do. And then, yeah, I mean, the deal with Central, that was just unbelievable. And then I think in no way were we surprised that Carr would win a state championship. I said it all year long that they were my favorite to win it by a long shot. But the way they shut down Ash just reminded everybody of the physicality and the type of football they play really on a regular basis. They came out and proved the point, I thought, in that state championship game. And I've already met with a couple of those Carr guys that are coming in this year, and these guys are like super confident, saying they're going back to back. And so, and I'm not doubting them by any means.
Understandably, by the way. I mean, look, we'll get through it throughout this season, but Johnson at quarterback has looked phenomenal. They've got a ton of guys. They got this transferred from California who looked incredible in the scrimmage. He's a name you're going to hear throughout the season. But really, another impressive thing was Vermilion Catholic and Catholic New Iberia actually played earlier in the season. We knew Vermilion would be good, but that was the only team, if I'm thinking correctly, who beat Catholic New Iberia throughout the season. So they get to play again this season, and that'll be a really fun one to circle throughout the season.
Yeah, no, that's right. And like those, somebody like Vermilion Catholic, again, it's a team that's just been knocking on the door. They lost in the Dome a couple of years ago under Coach Brock Prejean. He got them back and they won. But just looking back through the bracket up in Division I non-select and Division I select, what Ash did throughout the playoffs and really all year long to get to that point in Carr, the score was 53-8. I mean, you look at the scores of the games of Ash's season, and you don't think that anyone could do that. It wasn't even close. And then you look at what Ruston did throughout the regular season. They beat 3 teams from Texas that were legit state title contenders in Texas. They run through a gauntlet in the regular season. They beat Destrehan 44-7 in the semifinals, and to show up in the Dome against a Central team who had just traveled up to Neville and won a close semifinal game, and Central shuts them out 42-0. That was, I mean, you almost, when you're in it, you don't think about it, but just looking back at it, that's extremely impressive.
Yeah, and also looking at some of the other games that we kind of mentioned, Shaw taking on E.D. White. Shaw hadn't won a title in 40 years. The last time they did it was also under Hank Tyranny, and after a long absence, comes back and wins the title there. And Coach Hank is going to have his team right. They lose some pieces this year, but then you also had Cecilia taking on Franklinton, a Cecilia team who's going to lose their head coach. We're going to talk about that in a bit. When we talk about new coaching changes. But, Cecilia is a team that had a lot of talent returning and beat a Franklinton team run by Coach Salt. And we all know Coach Salt in our own ways. And, again, won the first title at East Jeff ever. Really, you want to go back. He won that season when they won the title at East Jeff. That was their first playoff win in 30-plus years. So, the job that he's able to do in the short time and turn Franklinton around for that matter is really incredible. And he'll have a lot of guys returning this year too. But again, just gets me more excited talking about all these matchups last year and what's to come this year.
It brings back good memories of just our show and the amount of fun we had on it last year, just looking back at these teams. I mean, we had Coach Mike Baimani from Shaw on early in the playoffs. Coach Salt joined us. Coach Weiner from Dunham joined us, and all those guys ended up in the Dome. So it's good to be friends with the right people, And
that's a good plug there. So what you're saying is, if you want to go to the Dome, come on our show.
Come on in.
we got the secret. All right, so that was the results from the state championships last year. And one thing, and we were talking about this before we went live, that was different last year in the brackets. It finally feels like since 2013, when select and non-select public and private schools got split, it finally felt like last year the brackets were not just competitive but balanced, and they were able to fill brackets with quality teams, and it was earned to make the playoffs. And then the road to the Dome was one that it was difficult, as it should be, and it's like when you got there, the very best teams at the end of the year were playing for state championships.
Yeah, look, Cecilia were the road dogs last year. Cecilia went on the road and won every playoff game leading up and then won a state title. It felt very earned. They did have bye weeks throughout, which was a little bit of a difference. But when I called playoff games with both of you guys, and we were both looking at when I was with y'all, we were looking at the brackets. We're like, man, this bracket looks really good. And I'm like, well, wait, this bracket looks really good. And when you talk about top to bottom, or how many guys, how many brackets in the country look like Division I select this year with the amount of talent? And it was not a matter of, and of course, Carl was by far the best team last year on the field. They proved it, but you could have gone back and said, man, there's 4 or 5 teams, or maybe even 6 or 7, who could make it to the title game, really depending on where they fell into the bracket. John Curtis was a team that had an abnormally low year, found their way in the right side, the right part of the bracket, good matchups, and made a run to the quarters. So it really kind of depended on where you fell, and it felt like every game you were going to get a really good matchup, regardless of which bracket you were watching.
No doubt, it was a huge step in the right direction. I don't think it's perfect by any means, but it definitely a huge step in the right direction. Just to see a full competitive bracket was great to see again, and I think it's going to continue to trend in the right direction moving forward.
Yeah, no doubt, and it was. And just looking at them now in the non-select side, the top 4 seeds received a 1-week bye. In years past, there was teams getting 2-week byes, and then the 3rd week they're playing a team that is 2-8 in the regular season. Like it finally felt like it was almost like it was supposed to be.
How much do y'all think that's going to impact scheduling, though? Right, because we talk about power ratings and how much that plays in, but I mean, you have to think that's going to start to play into a factor where it's like, look, I want to load up that non-district schedule because I know what we have coming on the tail end. If you were in Division III Select, that bracket was, I mean, so vast. You had Catholic New Iberia, you had Newman, you had just top to bottom, like powerful teams. And you want to get that bye to kind of rest up. I have to think that some of these teams are going to look around and be like, look, we need to go ahead and schedule some of these, step up in classification, get some of these power ratings to maybe catch a bye to make sure we're healthy before we jump into this larger slate.
Yeah, I think that's going to be I think, in my opinion, the imperfections are in how everybody's district right now. I think there's some districts that are really, really strong. I think there's some districts that are really, really weak. And somehow I wish that we could figure out more balance within the districts. I think that's going to lead to an even better bracket at the end and better matchups. So I think that's what I would like to see, that being the next step, is just kind of reanalyzing the districts.
Yeah, no, and on that same point, that's a good point with the district, how imbalanced they are. Also, there's teams that are, and people have to kind of get readjusted to how it works now. There's essentially no classifications anymore, except when it comes to districting. So what happens is, like, we'll use St. Thomas More, for example. They play in a 4A district, but they play Division I in the playoffs. I think the change that I would implement, and this may even help the districts, is your districts is who you're playing in the playoffs. So whatever that looks like, there's going to be Division I districts, Division II, and so on and so forth. But I think that can confuse some fans, with a 4A team or a 3A team playing in a bracket that's not peers that they're playing in the regular season.
Yeah, I was through before the season started over the summer. I was trying to label and figure out bracket, district, select, non-select, and you'd be shocked at the amount of times you got to check the list, recheck the list, and like, wait, this team is Division II. But so it's confusing for me, who's been covering the sport for a while, much less the average fan who's just going to watch a game on Friday night. I mean,
confusing for you. That's my job, and I don't
exactly.
So, yeah, I guess it can't be it can't be perfect, but I think where it is right now, looking back over the last decade plus, once the split happened, I think right now it's as good as it's been, and it's as good as it's going to be unless everyone comes together.
Which, I don't think that's going to happen anytime soon. But although this new move we kind of talked about, Cass, before we went on air, was this movement that they're having to try and put Division I being select and non-select. I mean, that would be a step in the right direction, although I don't think that would be – I don't think that would be top to bottom. I don't think they'd be trying to make that push just yet.
Yeah, no, I don't know – honestly, I don't know that it would ever come back together the way it is. But and, just looking around the country, talking about our state immediately to the east and west of both Texas and Louisiana, I think what leads to better non-district matchups earlier in the season, the way we do it with PowerPoints – over there, their playoffs are based solely on district standings. So you have these big matchups that are non-district games. Essentially, they don't mean anything. The one difference in our state is every single game for 10 weeks without a bye every single one means something. They all impact the playoffs. It's not like you can rest up and just focus on your district, which obviously that helps, but you drop a game early in the year, that's going to affect where you play it in the second week of November. So I think that creates some urgency, and it forces coaches to right out of the gate, you better be ready to play, or it can affect your entire season.
Yeah, I'd prefer our system over the Texas system. I mean, we know like it, not too long ago. I mean, heck, when we were in high school playing high school baseball, our playoffs were still solely dictated off of where we fell in our district, and that would create an even bigger issue with like stronger districts versus weaker districts, and not really getting the best teams in at times. So I think we still have it right in that regard.
Yeah, I agree.
You give me flashbacks to Friday Night Lights where they're flipping the coin to see who goes to the playoffs.
Exactly.
I mean, like I can't imagine that being the way that we determine who goes to the playoffs, especially when there is a bit of an imbalance. And when you look at the Catholic League and you look at, there's no other. I mean, look, no disrespect to the other districts. Look, there's 5-1A is really strong as well, but I mean, there's no district in the state, very few in the country that have the strength that the Catholic League has, and we've talked about it last year. 2 teams in the Catholic League had to stay at home, right? Despite being top to bottom so strong and seeing those matchups each week, 2 teams had to sit at home. So, I think power ratings is definitely superior to having to use a coin flip or who just so happens to be in the right spot playing the right teams.
Yeah, no doubt. It also leads to some more variance too in the playoffs, as opposed to knowing what districts you're going to face in the playoffs. It's almost like you can chart your path to the state championship prior to the season because you know who you're probably going to face from each district. The way it's done here is you got to go win games, and then wherever the points fall, that's where they fall. So it does make for some exciting non-district games that mean a whole lot, as well as some playoff matchups that are pretty exciting. Moving on, you mentioned it earlier. Jason, Lance, I'll actually come to you first on this because you're very familiar with this program. But we have some coaching changes. Obviously, there's changes every year. It seems like maybe this year, maybe just because we're paying attention more, there's some bigger name programs, prominent programs that are changing coaches. One of the biggest is in New Orleans at Newman with Coach Nelson Stewart. Unless you're, I don't know, 50 years old, you don't know what Newman looks like without him either on the team or on the sideline. So that's going to be very different this year. Aaron Weiss, U-High's offensive coordinator, is going to take over his first head coaching job. Obviously, it's a great job, but I think it's a great job because of what Coach Nelson Stewart did. So, Lance, any thoughts on what you saw from that? How you feel it's going to look going forward?
Working with Coach Nelson Stewart the last couple of years, it was evident of why they're so successful. I mean, he's just such a first-class act, and so certainly big shoes to fill. With that said, Aaron Weiss is coming from one of the top programs in the state. It's a similar level of football, right? So, I mean, he knows what he's walking into. It is just a whole new era, it feels like, of Newman football now that they're past the Arch Manning and the Eli Friend kind of era. So it's really interesting to see what they look like. Certainly wishing them nothing but the best. It's been really fun working real closely with that program the last couple of years, but it's almost just a complete wild card. It's hard to really know. They've lost a lot of their notable players from the last couple of years, and then they have a new coach, but it's certainly a great culture. They've won in a lot of sports over there. So their athletic director and their following, I mean, their resources, like I'm confident that, he's going to come in and do a great job, and I'm looking forward to it.
Jason, anything on that before we move on?
Yeah, I mean, it's when you come from a program like U-High, right? You're already used to those expectations. And Coach Weiss, was actually the bowling coach, by the way, at U-High. He actually led his team to the playoffs. And
there we go.
I read an interview where they said, "You're going to bring that over." And he said that was not part of the deal, which I loved. I thought that was brilliant. But look, Coach Weiss, he's been around a lot of talent. He knows how to maneuver his offense and make things happen, and that's what Newman is accustomed to, right? We've got to see the way Coach Stewart ran his offense and operated. You got Jake Randall coming back in the backfield, who's an incredible athlete. You have Hendricks Hill, who's, again, a guy getting offers from Baylor and Washington. So you have some toys to play with. And George Loop, again, another guy who's got some Ivy League looks. and they got some talent up front. I mean, I think they're going to be competitive. But really, when you look at the schedule last year, you expect them to have St. Charles week 1, which is going to be, a big test. But really, South Plaquemine is going to be a fun one to watch down the stretch because we know what they have returning. But, I think Coach Weiss has a great opportunity here to kind of rebuild this program in his image, and which can be tough when you talk about a guy who's been there so long, like Coach Stewart, who's, as Lance so well put it, such a driven guy and he was the hometown guy. He was an alum. He was there for 30 plus years on the field at the school. So it's going to be different. But people just need to kind of hold their breath and realize like change is coming, and change isn't always a bad thing. And I think Coach Weiss is a guy who can definitely put that program in the right direction.
Yeah, no doubt. And speaking of keeping it in the family and change at big-time programs, over in the Lafayette area at Acadiana, you've got Coach Doug Dotson taking over. And if that name sounds familiar, his dad's name is on the stadium, taking over at Acadiana for the Wrecking Rams, taking over for Coach Matt McCullough. Coach Dotson's, he was an assistant there for 4 years prior to being the head guy, but now he gets the keys to the program, one of the most consistent and best programs in the state over the last, 30 years, 25, 30 years. And it's a team, it's a program that seems no matter who's playing, running back, quarterback, head coach, exactly what they're going to look like when they show up. They're going to wear green jerseys, gold pants, and gold helmets, and they're going to run the veer, and they're going to run it right at you. And you're going to have to go up there, and you're going to have to be physical. That is not going to change. And, I know Coach Dotson's going to continue to do the same thing with that program. But that's another one that, it's changing hands, but you seem to think that it's just going to keep rolling along.
Yeah, I mean, it's got to be difficult to take the mantle of a program where your dad's name is on the wall when you walk in. I mean, that's a jarring experience, but he's a guy who's been around the program. He knows what to expect, whether it was on the sideline as an assistant or watching his dad coach the program. I mean, I think when you look around the state, something I kind of analyzed a lot of coaching hires, a lot of people where they are. There is an astronomical amount of alum as the head coach at the school, or people who have ties to the program. And I think, Lance and Cass, I think you guys have some experience with that, coaching at a place where you have emotional ties and what it does to you as a person in the tribe, it makes you have. It doesn't always work out in the end, but I promise you, somebody who has some type of tie to a program, you won't find anybody who will work harder to make sure that things work out.
Yeah, I would have zero concerns about Acadiana if they're keeping it in the family. They're still running a veer. They're still getting away with jumping off sides. They're gonna be just fine. All right, they're gonna be just fine.
It's a rolling start, Lance. It's a rolling start.
Whatever it is, they're getting away with it. So good for them. They should keep doing it, and so I'm sure they're gonna keep doing it. And so, but
I think they will.
Yep, good for them.
Yeah, and staying in that same area, two other programs. You got some new coaches over in the Lafayette area at LCA. You got Coach Matt Stanford taking over. He was an interim last year. I think after week 1 or week 2, he took over the program and guided them through the rest of the season. He got the full-time job in the off season. And then at Turlings Catholic, you have Dane Chaponche, who has taken an OC job at East Ascension, and in steps another alum, Michael Kerrville. He spent a year as Catholic High's defensive backs coach. He was a defensive coordinator at Karen Crow. So a kid who I call him a kid, a guy who, he's experienced, he's young, he's energetic. He's seen what it's like to do it at a high level at Karen Crow, seen what it's like to do it at a high level at Catholic. Now he gets a chance to put his fingerprints on a Charlie's Catholic program.
Yeah, and I got to watch some of the Turlings Cecilia's scrimmage the other week, and they looked like they hadn't really missed a beat. They looked really solid. I know Cecilia's got a lot of guys who are kind of coming in. George Muno's son actually is the quarterback at Turlings. Really looks like a solid arm there, senior. And again, I don't think that program's going to slow down by any means. But again, emotional ties. I do think that you're seeing that a lot. We're seeing a lot of coaches come in and out of programs for whatever reason, but you're also seeing these programs kind of latch on to guys who have some type of tie to their whether it's their hometown, whether it's their former school, or whether they formerly coached there. And again, it's for a reason.
Yeah, I can't say I know much about Coach Michael Corville. I know Coach Dane Chaponche is a heck of an offensive mind, and so I'll be keeping an eye on that offense just to see how they keep it rolling without Coach Chaponche. And I know he's going to East Ascension, where he's going to do great things as well. If I can point one out in that kind of general direction, it's at St. Louis, where Chris Truax is taking over. That's a Northwestern State guy, big time offensive line coach. That he was there for a little while when I was coming through Northwestern, but I mean, anybody you talk to in the city of Natchitoches says nothing but great things about Chris Truax. So excited to see him back in high school football at St. Louis.
Yeah, and that's a program too. As an athletic program, they're always competitive in all sports, but for some reason, it just seemed like the football program was maybe a step or two behind, for example, their baseball program, who has won a state championship and played for them. But if he can get that thing rolling, that area is loaded with talent. It's there's resources there. That's a school that really wants to win and compete at the highest level, and that's a great opportunity for him.
Yeah, it seems like I followed him a little bit. I've had a couple different coaching buddies there over the years, and it seems like they're always either really good or really bad. And it's just, are they building the right culture and attracting the right, group of friend athletes to come to their place in the right given years, So, but yeah, I'm sure he's going to be a good addition for them.
Yeah, no, like you said, that's the hardest thing to do. Obviously you're getting different players every year in high school sports, but the culture that you create supersedes all that. And if you can create one that one is inviting to the kids and allows them to reach their potential, that's going to allow you to sustain, a high level of success. And, hopefully they can find that formula down there at St. Louis.
But, Kaz, it's not a head coach, but we've talked about this already. East Ascension, for those who aren't aware, for those who have not been plugged in, really might be one of the most interesting off-season hiring sprees I've ever seen. You mentioned Coach Dane Chaponche, who was formerly at Turlings Catholic. Thank you for the pronunciation, by the way. Zero chance would have got that right. But he's now the offensive coordinator at East Ascension, which is a school that somehow, according to what I've looked at, has never won a state title, which is shocking because of the amount of talent that comes out of there. But, oh, by the way, they go down the road to Cecilia and hire Dennis Skanes, who is Brock Mathern, the head coach at East Ascension's former DC at Bell Chase. I think that is a program that you must keep your eye on. They have a really solid offensive front, a running back, which, by the way, is like a bottle of lightning in the backfield. I think that is going to be a team to definitely keep your eye on this season and expect them to make a run over the next few years. With this staff in place and with the talent that they have, I think that is a scary combination for anybody out there in Division I select. Non-select.
Non-select, yeah.
I got the save. I fixed it.
You got it. The other one, looking at our list of coaching changes, and I don't know how much insight any of us three have on it. It's just been interesting to follow some tumultuous times. But up at West Monroe, you've got DeMichael Dizer, who was their strength coach, is now taking over for Kevin Davis, who was there for like 5 minutes. That's been some interesting things happening up there. Speaking of programs that are used to being in the Superdome, that's one of them. They made a deep run in the playoffs last year. They went on the road. They actually lost to Central in the quarterfinals, which that's the furthest they've been in a couple of years. But that's a program that, when you think about Mount Rushmore high school football programs, not just in the state but in the region, that's one of them. And for them to try to find some kind of consistency at the head coaching spot, it's after Coach Show's, it's been hard for him.
It's ironic you mentioned Coach DeMichael Dizer. I actually got a chance to speak with him earlier in the summer. So for those who don't know, his brother is the head coach at St. Martin's, Kevin Dizer, who was formerly the head coach at Riverside. We've worked the booth together a few times. Really great guy. But I got to talk to Coach Dizer. Look, he's been at the program since 2017 in various capacities. Really was a strength and conditioning coach. When you look at the team's tape from last year and the athletes that they have coming back, they've got 2 backs who are incredible. They got 3 quarterbacks, including a 6'4" sophomore who is, by the way, not listed as the starter right now. A wide receiver who is Tez Davis, who I would argue is one of the top receivers in the state, signed with or committed to Tulane. I think this team has a ton of potential, but as you mentioned, with that job comes so much expectations. But when you talk about a guy like Dizer, two-time All-State, was the captain for his team, defensive MVP at Grambling, spent some time with the Seahawks. He's a guy who's used to expectations and is used to rising to the occasion. I think he seems like a guy who has everything in order. He's ready to go with this program. And this is a team, when you look at their district, it's a brutal district. But I do think West Monroe is a team that some people are going to look around and say, man, I thought they were kind of, struggling a little bit. I really think this team has a chance to make a massive run this year and make a massive jump from last year.
Yeah, I mean, completely agree. Kevin Dizer at St. Thomas, at St. Martin's, great dude. I've met with him a handful of times. So, given that he's the brother of Kevin, I'm sure they're, cut from the same cloth. Shout out to strength coaches. Glad to see this guy getting a head job. And if there's one thing about a strength coach taking over is he knows those players and those kids in a way that nobody else does. I can promise you that. And so that's always a huge step in the right direction for that program. And they just, they were always the standard of football. But more importantly, they were the standard of consistency. And all of a sudden, they haven't been the standard of consistency. So they need somebody to step in and do this for more than a year or two, right?
Yeah, if you want to see strength and condition and see these guys and how they do, go look at this offensive line's tape, y'all. This offensive line is disgusting. They all look like they were on 4-5. I was running a 5-5, wind aided back in my day on a good day. And these guys are like jets out there, man. They're moving, and I think that's one of the most interesting hires of the offseason.
Yeah, well, Lance has tons of experience in this, but it's the strength and conditioning coach and it's the special teams coordinator who touches the whole roster, and it's the summertime, it's the strength and conditioning coach with all the players setting the culture. Obviously, special teams, you deal with both sides of the ball, and he's done both. So you would hope that they can kind of get it going again. Anything else that jumps out to any of you, coaching-wise?
I mean, just the fact there's some big names, I mean, Lowell Narcisse, Rohan Davey, moving on. LaFours at Parkview Baptist. He's been there, had a ton of success, and he's going to be moving on. So, I mean, there's just so many big names. I mean, of course, my favorite guy here is PJ Sprunk. He's moving to Haynes Academy, and so it's a nice little move up the chain for Coach Sprunk. I'll be watching those guys for sure. Coach Sid Edwards, that's another big name moving on. So I mean, it's just a lot of change going on. So it'll be exciting to see how all these programs, take the right step forward.
Yeah, no doubt, and it's a lot of guys that have been there for a while. Like speaking of Coach Sid Edwards, he hasn't been a Struber for a while, but he's been doing it for a while. He got promoted to Baton Rouge mayor. So how about that?
Wow.
That's a decent promotion.
Yeah, he ran for mayor and won. And then you look at down over here in my neck of the woods. I'd be remiss if I didn't mention my man Chris Powell at Laranger. Lance, you want to throw out your demons? That's a former Lion right there, former Southeastern Lion offensive lineman taking over at Laranger.
Willie Brooks going to Errett.
Yeah.
If somebody gets that program back on the right track, look out. Errett's always a dangerous one if they've got the right leader.
Yep.
And Coach Messina, former Laranger coach, 23 years at Laranger, heading back to his alma mater at Independence, which is a program that's kind of struggled. So it'll be interesting to see that move for sure. And there was one other one that really stood out to me, and that's Huntington. Huntington is a really interesting one because they actually hired hold on, I had it a second ago. Coach Simon. His son actually is now playing at Texas. He went to Calvary Baptist, was an incredible running back. Again, he's a guy who's coached all over the country, at Arizona State, at various programs. Was the OC at Grambling, is now coming down to the high school ranks. And when I tell you, one of the biggest offensive lineman classes returning this year, guys, I don't think there's a single one of them under 300 pounds. 320, 350. I'm telling you, that's a team to keep your eye on. We're 5-5 last year. Adding Coach Simon to the mix, I think that'll be a fascinating situation up there up north.
Yeah, it seems like we talked about West Monroe and their struggle to be consistent lately, but then you look up there and it's Neville who's never gone away. It's Ruston who's been consistent and they've seemed to taken it up to another level. You have Calvary Baptist, like that North Louisiana. They're starting to play some real. I say starting to play. They're playing some really really good football, and I think that's great for the state. And then you look at a program. This is not a new coach, but like Ash down in Central Louisiana again, getting it rolling and being extremely competitive. And it's just, it's made the playoffs extremely fun. And, when you look up at that district up in 1-5A, you mentioned it earlier, but it's insane. And the way that those teams play and how physical they are, that is a grind. And if you get it out of that schedule, 6-4, 7-3, that's really, really dang good. And that's going to be fun to watch as the season progresses and as the playoffs progress.
When you take a step back and you think, how long ago was it when the playoffs first began in this new format? I'm tossing out a year. It could be slightly off. I believe it was 2013, the first year that select and non-select began. And think back to the original Division I select. Guy, there were 10 teams. The only team with any distance was Bird up north. And now, so you're playing every game against the same teams you're playing against district for a state title. I'm sorry. And Catholic of Baton Rouge was added to that mix. Yeah. Just comparing that to what we got to see last year in the road trips, that's what makes high school football so great. Getting to see these teams cross state, playing these big times, playoff matchups, and getting people excited and wanting to go to games. And I think we're finally getting a lot closer to that with the new way that we formatted the select and non-select.
I was coaching at Holy Cross in 2013, and those kids were robbed of playoff football. Is really what it is. We had a great team. We won one game, which we went on the road and beat a really tough Catholic team. But we were 8-2, went to Catholic, beat Catholic, lost to Bird down here at Tag Gormley in the semis. But that was our whole playoffs. It was just go to Catholic, Bird comes to us, and that was it. And we should have gotten a chance. Those kids should have gotten a chance to play 2 more playoff football games, and they didn't. They should have a real round 1 and round 2 is what I mean. And so, I'm glad that we're back to real playoff football. I think everybody is.
No doubt. And you know what? If that means that, instead of getting a pass into the semis that you lose in the second round or the third round, but you have a great experience, you got, and it's supposed to be tough. It's supposed to be hard. Making that trip. And that's another thing. And I'm using Texas and Mississippi because they're right next to us, but like the way their playoffs are set up, you don't travel. You're not playing someone from South Mississippi isn't playing anyone from North Mississippi until the state championship. Here, that could be a first round matchup, and that's part of the fun and the experience. Lance, I know you and we got to travel up to Evangel for a playoff game. It was fun. You go out, you play a really tough opponent, you take your bus ride the whole day, and it's a great experience for the kids. And I'm glad that they're now finally, after the last decade, they're starting to get back to that.
No doubt.
All right, we'll start to wrap it up here. I know this is Jamboree week. Easy for me to say, Jamboree week. We had scrimmages this past week, leads into Jamboree, and this is it's the last time you do it. Everything's real except for the result. Essentially, it's the dress rehearsal, whatever you want to call it, but you're playing on a Friday night for the most part. You're wearing your full uniform. There's a halftime. It's 2 quarters, and then you start to get geared up for week 1. But anything for y'all that stands out? I know one thing that kind of stood out to me, and it seems like lately in the past, there's been a jamboree with whether it be a whole city or an area, and there's 4 teams or 6 teams in 3 games. It seems like now there's starting to be more just 2 teams going to play a jamboree, and I don't know how every jamboree I've been a part of, it's been in a group setting. I don't know how that changes. I don't think it changes the preparation, but it may change the environment, the atmosphere. I don't know if it's better or worse. It just seems like you're starting to see a little more of that.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm looking at a couple, maybe just because they're the closest ones to me, but some of my best memories are that Jamboree weekend when, back in our day, it was Holy Cross, Chalmette, St. Bernard High, and then usually one other team, and it was like a whole community event. And the
Yep.
games, the result didn't matter, but it was just people from 4 different schools coming together, all kind of cheering for each other, And so
Yeah.
I thought it was really cool. But yeah, I mean, I know for us, we still have the Shellman High Jamboree where Holy Cross, Shellman, Bell Chase will all be a part of that. And then who am I missing? One other team that's in that one, South Platte, actually.
Yeah.
And then the other one up north that I'm really excited about, they're calling it the Battle on the Bricks at Northwestern State, where they have 12 schools coming together on Friday and Saturday. And so I won't be there I'm going up there Wednesday, Thursday. I'm going to meet with the St. Mary's team out there and all, but that looks like a really cool event, and I can't imagine how much fun that's going to be in that area.
Yeah, that one should be fun. I'm speaking of games up there. One I'm really interested in kind of keeping an eye on is actually on Friday night, though. It's Leesville versus Natchitoches Central. So for those who don't know, Coach Laird, who was formerly the Northwestern State head coach, is at Natchitoches Central. And man, he's got a heck of a quarterback in Owen Smith. He's also got a really talented safety that's playing for him. That's a team. I think they only won 2 games last year. I think they're ready to make a jump. And Leesville is coming back after losing their all-world back. So I really think that's an interesting game to take a look at. But then you also look at there's some more games up north. You got Ruston and Neville, who are actually going to be in the Jamboree, although they're in the same district, so it's a little bit awkward that they're matching up against each other. But again, if you're talking about benchmarks to see where your team is and how good they are, but in that same Jamboree, you also have Oak Grove taking on West Washita. West Washita is a team that's going to surprise a few people this year. We're really competitive that last year, might be fixing to make that jump. And we all know about Oak Grove. Smaller school, but are always willing to play up and play some real competition. And, of course, you got Evangel and West Monroe. We talked about West Monroe earlier.
By the way.
That's my point. I mean, that is a loaded – it's over – I mean, I think it's over 2 – it's over 2 days, over the 29th and the 30th. But that is a loaded Jamboree, and so a lot of fascinating matchups.
Yeah, no, that's good, man. It's so glad – I'm so glad, like, we're actually talking about real life football. This is – the best time of the year for sure, and we're fired up to do it. So, y'all have any other thoughts before we're going to wrap up here tonight? I think we covered a lot. It was fun. I like the expertise that Jason brought. You're definitely making us look good.
Well, I mean, I'm trying not to talk over y'all. I apologize, man. I've been prepping since last December, man. So I got y'all.
The bowling fact, that was the fact of the night. Yeah.
Where else can you go for that? There's nowhere else. Nowhere else in the country you could go for that. Well, with that, if you're still watching, we really appreciate it. This was a whole lot of fun. You can find us here every Sunday night. Next week, we're going to jump right back on here Sunday night, a little bit after 8 p.m. We'll have some results from Jamborees to talk about, and we're going to look ahead to, guys, the week 1 slate is loaded. There is some big-time high school football matchups that we're going to dive into next week, and then they kick it off, and it's time to go. So with that being said, we appreciate y'all following along, listening. Like, subscribe to our YouTube channel, follow us on Twitter, and we'll see y'all back here next Sunday night.